Just updated the topic.
Hi, everyone. We are live. So good to see you. I'm going to go live on Instagram as soon as I can. Here we go. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to be here with you today with Coach Diana. We had a little tech problems in the beginning, so we're a little frazzled, but thank you so much for showing up. Today, we have a very important topic. And before we even ask you to respond to the topic, we want to remind you that this is our public Facebook page, because if you respond to the topic, is it normal for you to feel afraid of your spouse? If you're going to answer yes or share how you feel afraid of your spouse, understand that that may cause more problems for you. This is a public Facebook page, and so we want to make sure that you are mostly safe when you respond here. So we're going to talk about this. And if you have questions that you would like to ask about this anonymously, because it is a touchy topic and you may not want your name associated with that topic on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, then just put it into this line, leslievernick.com/question/ just type that into your browser, leslievernick.com/question/ and then it'll get a form there. You can fill out your question and submit it, and then we can answer it for you anonymously. All right. So is it normal to feel afraid of your spouse? Yes or no? Is it normal for you to feel afraid of your spouse? Yes or no? What do you think? Those of you who have been married longer than 6 months, how long have you been married, Diana?
Oh, geez, 33 years.
Okay, and I've been married 49 years this year. So is it, no, and I got married when I was 10, by the way, guys.
Me too.
I was a child bride. So the answer, Tamara has in all caps, nope. Nope.
Yeah.
N-O. It's a hard no. It's a hard no. It is not normal for you to feel afraid of your spouse. In fact, that is one of the red flags that you are in a destructive, abusive marriage. Of course not. No. The person that you sleep next to every night, that you close your eyes with, should be the safest person in the world.
Well said.
Yeah. Someone said, Mary Linda said, I'm married 51 years. I used to be afraid of him. So I'd be curious, Linda, what changed that you're not afraid of him anymore? All right. What changed? Because if you're afraid of your spouse, there is something really, really wrong. Not afraid for your spouse, but afraid of your spouse. Right? There's something really, really wrong. So let's talk about some of the ways Linda said going through a divorce. Let's list some of the ways we might be afraid. Obviously, physically afraid. Okay, so if you've been physically threatened, if you've been physically harmed, if you've been bullied or, hit before or threatened to be hit, those kind of things create fear in us, as they should. God has hardwired your body for safety. Your body is continually scanning for safety. Did you ever see a rope or a hose and think it was a snake at first and you startled? Because your body is always scanning for safety. That is our self-preservation mode that is hardwired into our biology. So if you are always feeling that feeling in your household where you should feel the safest place, that's not good. What other ways might you feel afraid, or might someone else feel afraid? If you don't want to be personal about this because it's a public Facebook page or public Instagram page, I understand that. What ways might you feel afraid of your spouse? Or what ways might someone else feel afraid of a spouse? Or what ways have you heard your girlfriends have felt afraid of their spouse? What other ideas? Okay, afraid to talk about hard things because his reaction is scary. He yells, he throws a temper tantrum, he's, attacking, accusing, shuts down, has a pity party. So you feel afraid to talk about hard things. And so therefore, everything is just swept under the carpet, and there's a big old lump in your room, of a big lumpy carpet with all kinds of issues that are never talked about because it's scary to talk about hard things. What other ways do you feel afraid of your spouse? Or what other ways might someone feel afraid? We're going to be doing a workshop next Tuesday, a week from today, on this very topic. If he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? The answer is yes. I'm going to give you the answer right now. If he doesn't hit you, it can still be abuse.
So you
And
have
one of the things that is the red flag is I'm afraid of him, all right? Maybe he didn't hit me, but someone in the chat says, afraid he'll cut me off from all marital money. Why does he have that power? In the United States, at least, a couple has joint power legally. So why would you feel afraid? Because he's doing some things that make you feel that way. What are those things? Pay attention.
Mm.
Yeah. My drunk ex-husband used to cook dinner at 2 a.m. I would go to bed thinking we may all burn to death. Used to wake up with him burning the backyard grass. Yeah. I had a client whose husband set the garage on fire and she had all of her family mementos in there, all of her family pictures, all of her family of origin things that she wanted to keep, and burned it all down right to the ground in a fit of rage. Yeah, she was scared of him. I'm afraid to disagree or think differently than him. Okay, and so Dawn, you mentioned that. What are you afraid will happen? That's what you have to think about. What are you afraid is going to happen if you say no, if you disagree, if you're not on the same page? Because that's normal. That's normal.
right.
How many times have you disagreed with your husband, Diana?
Many, many.
Me
Um,
too. Me too. You know, I have a strong mind. I'm going to say my opinion and we're going to disagree because we're two different people. It's not bad. It's just part of life. But if you can't do that in your house without serious consequences, right? Yeah,
well,
afraid of, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I just think sometimes things have happened in the past that maybe aren't even occurring now that helps us to be afraid because he's maybe thrown things or used power and control or weaponized his size against you. And you have learned just that once. And so your body registers fear and you avoid many things just out of fear because of the anger. You know what's about to erupt.
Mhm.
So I think often, when fear is on board, and you're with someone who's not aware, or maybe they are aware and they're using it against you, they can weaponize it as a way to really have control over you and to manipulate you. And like you said, our bodies are scanning all the time for safety. And you may even be registering at a subconscious level, and you have learned how to behave to avoid that anger so that you're not starting conversations or saying what you want and need because you know what might be coming next. Maybe it happened a long time ago and it was so bad and horrifying that you just know, I don't go there now.
And if that's you, here's our second question. Is this God's will for you? Is this God's will for you?
Mhm.
So we think, oh, I promise to stay married till death do us part. Is it God's will for you to live in a covenant relationship with someone who scares you, someone you feel afraid of, someone you can't be yourself with, someone you can't be honest with?
Well, Leslie, that's contrary to the word of God. One of the biggest things that the Lord continues to tell us is do not fear. So, how can you walk at peace and in peace with God and the Holy Spirit when you're in fear? It is the opposite of trusting in God. And so, to me, that surpasses, really the fact that I have a covenant with someone who I'm walking in total fear of. The other piece for this is you're not even resting at night when you're registering fear to your partner. So, this really affects you physically, physiologically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yeah. Unpredictability causes fear, which is why trust and safety are vital. I said this before here on Facebook Live and on Instagram, friends, but Proverbs 31 really describes a healthy marriage this way. And I think this is really one verse that says it all. It says, he trusts her to do him good, not harm, all the days of his life. And in vice versa, she trusts him to do him good, not harm, all the days of his life. Now, I have to tell you, I've been married a long time, and our marriage hasn't always been easy or fun or good, or sometimes we've had hard patches, but I've never felt afraid that my husband would harm me. Never, right? And if I did, that would be a deal breaker for me because I grew up in a home that I felt afraid all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to feel that way in my own home again. I might feel that way if I'm in prison or in a concentration camp or if I'm kidnapped by a crazy person. I doubt or, in a hostage situation, I probably definitely will feel afraid. But in my own home, no, no. People I'm closest to, who I sleep next to, no. That's a hard no. So I think it's really important, ladies, if you're finding yourself answering yes to this question, am I afraid of my spouse? Whether it's I can't speak up, or I'm afraid to be myself because he always mocks me. Oh, you're just too much. You're too much. You're too sensitive. What's wrong with you? Like you can't laugh loud. You can't, be creative because something's wrong with you. You're too much. You want too much. You're too demanding. You're too and you start to shut yourself down into a shell of a person. Is that God's will for you? Is that God's will for you? Or is it God's will for him to be that way? No.
No.
But by you complying out of fear, and I get it, if you're afraid, we do comply. If I think I've told you over the last couple of weeks, I'm reading another World War II book. And if I were in those concentration camps, I would be complying too. You don't have a choice. But that's not what marriage is. Marriage isn't a concentration camp relationship. It's not a prisoner of war relationship. It's a relationship between two image bearers who made covenant promises to love, honor, cherish, protect, provide. Those aren't scary words. Those are safe words. Those are safe words. Why do you think God tells us to wait to have sex until marriage? Because he wants you to have that most intimate relationship in a trusting, safe place with a trusting, safe person who's committed to not harm you.
While it might be common, it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one thing I just wanted to share this, but I did have a conversation with Howard, and one thing he said to me that just made my heart melt was, "It's his job to be your protector."
Mm-hmm.
And he takes that seriously.
He does, because I've been threatened by some of your husbands. And so he does take that very seriously. And we had one scary incident that really made him feel scared. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I love that I love that image
Mhm.
of the feeling safe and having someone who has your back, and that you can rest easy knowing that you're not alone and that you have a protector there within your home.
Mhm.
That's not underrated at all, and many of our women do not have that.
Yeah. And so we want to open this up to some questions, but I'm going to give, or Diana and I are going to give some ways that you might feel afraid, because it might not be a fear. Like someone said in the chat, I'm afraid he's going to cut me off financially, that I'm going to have no health insurance and I'm going to have no resources to take care of myself if he leaves me, if I leave him, if he dies. I live in a retirement community. We've had situations where a husband died and he did something with all the money that she never knew about, and she's left with nothing. Imagine the anger that you deal with after that when you've been so betrayed, right? And so financially, it might be a fear. It might be a fear with the kids, that he's going to badmouth you and alienate your children.
Right? I remember I dated a man once that I broke up with. I was actually engaged to him, and he tried to put the fear of God in me. He said I would never be in God's will again. And so I wonder sometimes what lies have been spoken over you that keep you riddled in fear.
Mhm. And spiritual abuse is kind of the worst kind of abuse, even though we think about physical or sexual abuse being really degrading. Spiritual abuse is so damaging because they're using the authority of God and God's word to either justify their behavior, defend their behavior, or excuse their behavior, and to bully and intimidate you into compliance. And I'm going to talk a lot about that at our workshop. So if you haven't signed up for our workshop yet, because a lot of Christian women are not only being spiritually bullied by their husbands, but they're being spiritually bullied by their pastors and churches as well. And so I really want to talk about what that looks like and what Jesus says about it, because submission to a bully isn't what God calls us to in marriage. All right. He may tell us how to handle a bully when you're a slave and a master, or when you're a person walking on the road and a Roman guard is trying to make you walk 2 miles. He's telling you how to do it that way, but he's not telling you how to do that in relationship that way. And so I'm going to unpack some of that misteaching at the workshop. So if you haven't signed up yet, I'm going to put a link up here for you to sign up. For those of you who are in Instagram, I'm going to give you the link out loud. It's leslievernick.com. Same thing as my website, leslievernick.com/join workshop. One word, join workshop. And we're going to do it next Tuesday at noon Eastern time, the same time. And we're going to also do it on 7:30 p.m., same day, but not on Facebook and not on Instagram. It will be off social media. It'll be on a private webinar site that you need a link to. That's why you have to sign up. And there's going to be a pretty big workbook that goes with it, because I'm not going to be able to cover every verse and every passage in the Bible that I think is important for you to know is there. But I'm going to give you the resources for you to do your due diligence and really figure this out, because there's been a lot of spiritual abuse and spiritual confusion done in the name of God that has made God seem like the bully. And you're afraid of God now. You're afraid to make the wrong move, because God's going to be mad at you and throw you in hell if you say the wrong thing or do the wrong. And just, there's so much of that going on in our population. I just want to make that really clear. If he doesn't hit you, it can still be abuse, and some of it can be spiritual.
And it keeps you in bondage and in the cycle of fear and intimidation.
Mm-hmm. And God has a word for that, but it's not biblical headship. It's intimidation, oppression, and abuse of power. And those words are actually in the Bible to describe what we're talking about right now. And it is never to be a part of any interpersonal relationship, ever. In fact, Jesus tells his disciples, don't even use your power that way over people like the Gentiles do. That's not the way I want you to use power. And so if power is being used over you to intimidate you and make you afraid and push you into compliance mode, that is not called biblical headship, nor is that biblical submission. And I'm going to unpack all that for you next week at the workshop. So if those are some of your fears, please sign up so that you can attend. And I highly encourage you to attend live, because there's going to be a robust question and answer time with our coaches afterwards, as well as a robust chat, so that you can ask questions in the chat. You can talk to other people who have different opinions about this, that you can get your eyes open to some different ways of thinking and being and what people have been through. And that will really support you in your next steps forward.
Leslie, you asked some of the ways in which he has invoked fear, and Rhonda's saying in the chat, unpredictability causes fear. And wondering if you could speak a little bit to how unpredictability is very, very different from having the consistent safety of a spouse.
Yeah, so uncertainty, unpredictability is part of life, right? I mean, we don't know what our politics are going to do, or what our, but we sort of think we know. So for now, we feel pretty safe in the US, but we don't really have guaranteed certainty on anything. But if we really thought about that for a long time, we'd probably all feel pretty anxious. And our society is getting more and more anxious because of the uncertainty that's more obvious, because we're aware of more things in social media and all the things that we weren't aware of before. But when we live that way with a person, chronic uncertainty, chronic unpredictability. One day they're loving, the next day they're mean and cruel. One day they're saying they love us, the next day they're saying they hate us. One day they're, promising they'll never leave us, the next day they're threatening divorce. It makes us feel very anxious, because we're not designed to live that way. We're designed to seek safety. There's two parts of our brain that God has created. One part seeks safety. And when we're unsafe, then that part is lit up all the time. That part is not supposed to be lit up all the time. That part is supposed to be for emergencies, right? And it works really well for emergencies. But when that part of our brain for safety is lit up all the time, scanning for safety, what do I need to do to make sure I'm safe? What do I need to do to make sure I don't say anything that's going to set him off? What do I need to do to make sure I can get away from it? Whatever it is, then the other part of our brain, which is designed for growth, isn't working,
Right.
isn't able to function as it should. And so when you have littles in your house who are living like you, and they're also afraid, guess what? They're going to struggle in school. They're not going to mature as they need to mature, because if they're afraid for their safety, then the part of their brain that needs to be free to concentrate on algebra and writing papers and doing research and playing, and there is not going to be free to do that because they're worried about you, worried about them, worried about their family, worried about life. And so it's really important that we pay attention, when we feel those feelings.
And so if you don't have predictability of safety, if you're with someone who you don't know what's next, and it might I always think about fear. My husband's football size. He's like 6'4", 240 pounds. He can intimidate you with a look. And it might just be a look, it's not something physical, but if you're living in a consistent state of unpredictability with somebody and your body, all it needs to do is see that look, and then it's your brain snaps into action. And when your brain snaps into action, your adrenaline and your cortisol are coursing through your body. And as Leslie said, that's supposed to be a temporary measure to activate you for safety. But if you're living in that, your whole physiology is affected. And so oftentimes, Leslie, we know that leads to fatigue, confusion. So it is a mind,
Depression. Mm-hmm.
yeah, all kinds of things. And it's a total derailing of who you're meant to be because you're not allowed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Felicia in Facebook is saying, our prenup speaks of physical abuse keeps my marital rights. He laughed and said emotional abuse is not abuse.
Oh my.
And so I'm going to give you a lot of verses next week in the workshop. I'll do a few of them on the PowerPoint as we're talking, but I'm going to give you a lot of verses in the Bible that speaks about the danger of emotional abuse. Don't ever allow someone to tell you that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt you. The Bible says that's not true. It says life and death are in the power of our tongue, and emotional abuse is potent and it works. And so we have to know that if we're being emotionally abused, we're being harmed. And our initial strategy is to say, stop harming me. Like if I was afraid of my husband, and this is where one place I have been a little afraid sometimes, is sometimes he drives faster than I feel safe. And he's not a dangerous driver. He's not a road rager, but he just feels more comfortable driving safer than driving faster in like wet weather or snowy weather than I would feel. Right. I probably drive faster than him in regular life, but in bad weather, I'm like a little old lady driving and he's like driving just fine. And we grew up in Chicago. There was lots of weather issues. He knew how to drive there. So he doesn't feel afraid of it as I do. And so I might feel a little afraid when he's driving a little faster than I want him to. And I'll just say, I'm feeling scared right now. Can you slow down? And he will. He doesn't make fun of me. He doesn't say I'm being ridiculous. He'll just slow down because he doesn't want me to feel afraid. That's what people do, so that if you are feeling triggered or you are getting afraid of something and you speak up and you say that, the other person cares about that. They don't make fun of you or escalate, drive faster. Well, you feel scared with that. Well, let's watch this. I'll do a wheelie in the snow. They don't mock you for your fear. And so this is really important that you understand that you're probably not going to get them to change. If he changes, like if I say, could you please slow down? That's great. That's a great sign. He cares about your feelings. But if you've said, I'm scared, or I don't like this, or don't do this, or this hurts me, and they laugh at you and they keep doing it, the person who has to change is you.
Right. It's intentional at that point.
Right.
So I see in our chat, Nicole is saying her husband blames his verbal abuse on PTSD from combat. And the next comment is there aren't many resources for veteran wives. And what I see is that he's not willing to acknowledge what you said. He's not willing to acknowledge the effect on you. There are resources for veterans, and there are good therapies for combat PTSD. But unless and until someone acknowledges that it is a problem and they are willing to do something about it, you're the only one who could do something different.
Mm-hmm. And we had a large discussion about this yesterday because we were talking about, now I'm going blank on what we were talking about, but we were talking about something and somebody said there was lots of excuses like, well, he does this because of his childhood, or he does this because of this, and he may. So just because you don't intend to cause harm doesn't mean you don't cause harm. right? So
Right.
just because you don't intend to cause fear. So I had a rotten childhood. That's why I verbally abused you. My father treated me this way. Well, I had a rotten childhood too, and I don't abuse. I started to, and I recognized what I was doing, and I don't want to be that way. I don't want to do that. So at some point, you have to own what you have, whether you got it because of your character or you got it because it was done to you. You have to own your part and say, wow, I'm acting just like my father, or oh, wow, the war really traumatized me and I'm coming out in scary ways to my family. I don't want to be that kind of person. I need help because it's causing harm to the people I love. We don't make excuses, right? We don't make excuses. And so when someone harms you, whether they did it on purpose or they did it by accident, if someone crashes your car by accident and they cause you harm, you're in the hospital, your car is broken, your kid is killed, they're still responsible. They're still responsible to show care and pay the damages and hopefully not drive like that again, right? And so we make all kinds of excuses for someone because we feel bad that they had a hard time at war, or we feel bad because they had a hard childhood. And I get it. I had a hard childhood too, and I want some compassion, but I don't get a pass. I don't get a pass that I get to harm you because I was harmed, right? And we're giving people passes saying, well, it's because they were abused as a child. Well, if your husband was sexually abused by his father because he was a child, it's okay now he abuses your child? Is that okay? No, it's not okay.
Never.
Never. And so let's stop putting pillows around people. We can have compassion and say, yes, I get that this is hard for you because you were traumatized in war, but it's not okay that you traumatize us. You need to get help or we're moving out. What would it take for you to get strong enough to say that?
Right. And and really that is the first call to action, is setting a boundary around what is no longer okay for me, for my body, for my children, for us to endure. We have a question, how can we not be in a prison of fear in our minds and body when we're being gaslit and threatened by their punishment?
Mhm. Yeah. So we want to invite you to ask some questions, and especially if you need to ask them more privately, go to leslievornick.com/question/. And we're going to take about 25 minutes to answer some questions. For those of you who are on Instagram, I just want to give you a heads up that Lisa Turkhurst and I are going to be on at 7:30 Eastern time on her channel. So if you follow Lisa and you want to hear her and I talk a little bit about this, abuse stuff and the workshop that's coming up, then tune in at 7:30 tonight with Lisa's channel, and I will be on there with her. So what are your questions about what to do with your fear? If it's true that you're feeling afraid, you're feeling spiritual afraid, sexually afraid, I'm afraid I'm going to get an STD. He's a tomcat. He sleeps with all kinds of prostitutes, and yet he still wants sex with me and he refuses to wear a condom. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? Oh, I have to submit. Do you? Do you? What do you do with the spiritual abuse? What do you do with the verbal battering? What do you do with the physical threats and intimidation and bullying? How's this impacting you? How's this impacting your children? The impact is real, ladies, even if the intent you have compassion for. Even if you have compassion for him, the impact is real and the damage is real. I'm in 1 year married, struggling with a spouse that for any little difference wants to divorce or take her life. What's the godly way to deal with this when already talked to the elders, got her some medicine, and things are getting worse? So it scares you that she's threatening to kill herself, and I can get that. I've been with different people at times who have threatened that, and I've lost sleep over people who threaten themselves because I'm like, am I going to wake up to the morning and find that they did it? It's a very scary thing to be in a relationship, especially marriage or parent-child or any of those kind of things when you're with someone who's threatening that. Ultimately, who decides that for her? Ultimately, who decides that for her, whether she lives or whether she dies? She decides that for her, right? And as much as you want to get her help, only she can receive the help, right? So she has this mindset belief based on this paragraph that you wrote that unless I do everything she wants, unless I agree with everything she thinks, she's going to kill herself. That's a pretty tall order for any relationship. It's not possible. It's not doable. I'm different than you. I'm not going to agree with everything you think or do because I'm different, not because I'm right or you're wrong, but just because we're different. Why is that so threatening to you? Those are inviting questions to invite her to dig deeper, to do her work, but you can't make her. And I'm not saying just wash your hands and say, go do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I think there's a place where you have to accept this isn't my responsibility to make sure she doesn't do it. Diana, any thoughts about that?
Well, I have some thoughts. They're more reactions to what she's doing. And for me, it just feels like a little bit of arrested development. It seems like to me something that an adolescent would do. And so there's a little bit of emotional immaturity here that if life doesn't meet my demands, then I'm going to threaten, like, that's an extreme threat. And that's horrifying to the person who's experiencing that. Um, I guess my encouragement would be to hold her accountable, to develop some emotional maturity, and the only way you do that is by setting some guidelines and some boundaries. And I would do it in a gentle and a delicate way with empathy and tact, but that is not how full-fledged, mature adults behave.
It's interesting that you said that. I remember my daughter and I taking one of her girlfriends on a road trip. We were going to do, I had a business meeting in Ohio. And so we were driving from Pennsylvania to Ohio, and I took the two of them. We were going to go out to eat and do some fun things while we were there. And she didn't like something. And she said, I'm just going to kill myself. And I pulled over on the side of the road. And I stopped the car and I said, what does that mean? And she said, I don't like what you're doing. And I said, so you have two choices. You can go to the hospital right now and I'll drop you off and call your mother. Or you can stop ever saying that in my car or in my presence. Because if you say that again, our next stop is the hospital for an evaluation, right? And she never said it again. So it was one of those adolescent manipulative
Oh, yeah.
throwouts that, I want my way and I'm going to scare you into giving it. And so I think it is an important thing to understand that this is a very immature coping mechanism. She might still do it. And so that's the scary thing. But you're going to have to be the strong one to say, this isn't going to work to get your way. Because if it works, it only reinforces the use of that tool.
And, honestly, I might use that with an adult as well. I might say, how serious are you? Do we need to call someone? Oh, you can pink slip if they're not willing to say that they won't, and, harm themselves, you can pink slip someone. The police can do that. And so that's an extreme measure, but it does say I'm taking this very seriously because I care about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who might also be struggling with that, with an ex who says that, or if you leave me, I'm going to do that, to say, hey, I love you and I hope you don't make that terrible decision. It's a not alterable decision. Once you decide to do that and you do it, you can't change your mind if you're dead, right? So I hope you don't do that. But if you can't reassure me that you're not going to do that, I'm going to have to call the police, or I'm going to have to call 911, or I'm going to have to do a wellness check on you. I've said that to some people that have said that to me long distance over the phone. I'll just say, hey, I'm going to call the police station and have them do a wellness check on you because I'm not comfortable with hanging up right now by the way you're talking. And they will change their tune very quickly if they're not very serious. Sometimes they're very serious, but most of the time they just say, I don't really mean it. I'm just mad. And I say, okay, you can be mad. But when you say those things, that results in me calling for a wellness check. All right, next question. How can we not be in a prison of fear in our minds and body when being gaslit and feeling threatened by their punishment? I don't think you can't. So then what do you do? So I'm going to give you a verse. Diana, maybe you want to say some things too. In Proverbs, it says, the prudent see danger and what? Take refuge. They do something. God gives us our fear for a reason, to get away, to take action. It's not that we Or, oh, I see this man with a gun and I'm not supposed to feel afraid. What's wrong with me? Nothing. You're supposed to feel afraid so that you go the other direction. And what if that enemy is in your own household and you're married to them? What? So is marriage more important than your safety and your sanity? Is God asking you to lie and pretend everything's fine when you're shaking inside and afraid? I don't think so. Thoughts, Diana?
Well, you said, is marriage more important than your safety and your sanity? What I was thinking was, is marriage more important than your very own physical well-being? You cannot live in that state. And so, we've done this a while in this area. We've worked for a long time, Leslie, and decades of your body registering fear will break down your body physically, will break you down emotionally. But what I've experienced women or men do is they try to cope. They'll use ways and there it you can suppress that and you can override what's happening and just try to push forward, but your body is still registering it. You may think you're ignoring it, but it is having a physiological impact on you. And so I love your response. What will you do to get your body to feel safe, to be in a place where you can rest easy? It is not possible if you're living with someone who is continually making you feel fear.
Yeah, you're being traumatized over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a trauma response, we go numb, we disassociate, all of those kind of things in order to cope. I mean, that's what they did in concentration camps. But if we're Christians and we're talking about this, is that God's will for you? If you have a choice, in a concentration camp, you don't have a choice. You're a prisoner. But if you have a choice and you're living in America, you have options. Now, they're not all fun options. They're not all great, like I'm going to go live in the Hilton for the next 5 years, right? They're hard options, but pick your poison, all right? What's going to be more beneficial for you in the long run? And I think sometimes it's not only beneficial for you to draw a line in the sand and say no more, it's also beneficial for the abuser if they can use that as a wake-up call. Like, I can't keep doing this and have a relationship. It's just not possible. Not with you, not with anybody.
Leslie, and I would suggest if someone's in that situation and they've been doing it for a while, to get away for a short duration of time, I mean like a couple weeks, and notice the difference. Because when you're in it, you're in that state, you're not noticing it. But when you get away, and then just notice how you're different, you may be able to think more clearly, you may have more energy, and that's a testimony to you of what you really need to be well and to be strong and just to be who God's called you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then, because when you're in it, sometimes we make so many excuses for staying in it and for just getting through it. Maybe, we don't want the consequences or we're concerned about the finances. But if you can get away for just a couple weeks to notice the difference, I've heard so many women say to me, I had no idea what my body was enduring until I got out.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
What are some signs, Diana, of emotional abuse? My husband scares me when he gets angry and stomps through the house or slams doors or pounds his fist on the kitchen table. One time in the past, even talked about harming our male cat. I feel confused and don't know what to do anymore.
Oh, when I think of emotional abuse, I think of a lot more about psychological techniques. This man is using physical anger and aggression to weaponize fear and as a way of power and control and getting his way. Um, even threatening physical aggression to an animal that you love, of course you're confused because your body isn't able to think clearly when you're in that state. Your body's mobilized for action. So I would say these are not just signs of emotional abuse, Leslie. These are signs of physical abuse. And I would tell my clients, you know, um, if you're in a home and he's throwing a bottle against the wall and your kid's witnessing that or you're witnessing that, you're experiencing that as if it could be you. That's what's happening to your body. It's not just him slamming or breaking something or threatening the cat. So, like, your body is registering like, "That could be me." That is really an extreme form of abuse.
Well, and he's communicating, "This could be you."
Right, right.
He's communicating that, "This look at how strong I am. This could be you."
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. Um,
So it's
so
physical
when you
intimidation. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you say, "I feel confused and I don't know what to do anymore," that's my point. If you're in a state of confusion and you're in it, it's very hard to get to clarity there. And so short breaks can give your body a respite and allow your mind to gain some clarity. And again, we're going to invite you to this webinar because we want to weaponize you with information so that you can begin to have some clarity about what is happening to you and what you can do about it.
And I think one of the most important things uh, that you'll learn at the workshop, and I'm just going to give you a hint, and you're experiencing that a little bit right now, is you're going to need support. You're going to need support from women who have been there and are a little bit further ahead than you. And in our Facebook chat, we see that. We see a lot of support going back and forth. This is what I did. This is what I tried. This is where I was. This is where I am. And so I think this is so important that you attend the workshop live, because if you just get the replay, you will not get the chat. You will not get the Q&A, and you won't have the feeling of, I am not alone. I am not the only one. There's something wrong with me that he treats me this way. This isn't true. 1 in 4 Christian women report being in an emotionally destructive marriage. That's staggering. Just think of your church and look around. 25% of the women would raise their hand and say, I do feel afraid of my husband sometimes. Then you guys need to talk to each other, and we will talk to each other in the workshop, on the chat function, in the Q&A, so that you will begin to realize, whoa, other women have experienced this. They have taken steps forward. They are stronger. They are healthier. They're not living like this anymore. And I have to tell you that I have had men come up to me, and this isn't often, and this isn't, a promise, because it hasn't happened very often, but it has happened more than once, who have said, thank you for helping my wife finally get strong enough, not to berate me and call me some sort of name, like you're just some covert narcissist abuser, but say, I will not live like this anymore. I'm not going to let myself live in fear and being bullied or sexually mistreated or lied to or cheated on or whatever. If you don't want to get help, that is your choice. I accept that, but I won't live like this. That can be a wake-up call for them to say, wow, she didn't get ugly. She just got firm and strong and capable of saying, I'm not letting myself be bullied like this anymore. Done, not doing it. What would it take for you to get strong enough to be able to do that in a good way, not in a vindictive, rageful, snarky, ugly way, which then they're going to say, she's the problem, kids. See, she's losing her mind. And that just creates more problems for you. It's a cycle. We've seen it over and over and over again. What would be different if you could be strong and loving, firm and kind? Kind doesn't mean you let someone bully and intimidate you. Kind means you say, I'm not doing this kindly. Right? All right. And you said, I don't know what to do anymore. So here's your first next right step. Sign up at the workshop, leslievernick.com/join workshop. In that workshop, you're going to get the next step. So we can only take these steps one step at a time. Have you ever gotten you've heard directions and people give you 15 steps and you're like, oh, I'm never going to remember all this, right? So you need step 1, and then you need support. You need step 2, you need support. You need step 3, you need support, right? Because sometimes you fall down and you have questions on step 3, and now you need support to figure that out. So I'm going to give you the roadmap out of this, but you're going to have to come to the workshop to learn that roadmap and get the support you need to go forward. The first step, sign up for the workshop. Second step, attend the workshop. Take notes. Be present. Don't be distracted. Really get what God has for you. You're here for a reason. God wants you to listen to this. And if you're resonating with this, sign up for the workshop. All right, next question. I have always felt anxious and fearful in his company. but I did not recognize it when we were dating. I was very anxious around him, and now I still feel anxious and fearful. He's not physically abusive, but when he's around me, his presence feels so large and scary, and there is no emotional safety with him. I definitely do not feel emotionally safe. There's such bullying mentality with him that he always has something negative and critical to say. When he enters a room, everybody in the room leaves, and then he gets angry about that. How do I change my mindset to not feel the anxiety and fear around him? Well, I would say your first step would be this. And I don't know if you feel even safe enough to do this, but if you did, or there was a moment that you felt that was safe enough to be able to say, you know, after the party, you were wondering and you were upset that everybody left the room. Would you be curious as to why I think that might be happening? Right? And if he says no, believe him. He's not interested in changing. If he says, wow, what do you think? And to say something like, I'm not sure if you do this on purpose or it's just because you're a big guy, but you're a really big man. You're 6'4", you weigh, over 200 pounds. You're a big presence. And when you come into the room, people notice, but you don't come into the room with a really friendly stance. You come into the room with a kind of a scowl on your face and a, sarcastic remark and a cutting comment. And so everybody just like, ooh, feels that vibe. And I think that's why they leave the room. That's kind of how I feel around you a lot of times. And if he can receive that feedback and say, wow, that's not how I want to come across, that could be really helpful for him. And I think this is part of what you learn when you're working with our group is that you learn to be an important helpmate to your husband. And you also learn to recognize he's not interested. Right? So you can invite him to change and give him some accurate feedback, just like you would if you saw him with his zipper down in public. I hope you would say, hey, before you enter that room, you might want to pull your zipper up, right? In the same way, you might want to take that booger out of your nose that's coming out. It's not your best self. We would do that for our husbands. But why is it that we're afraid to say, when you enter a room, you kind of enter as a grouch and you kind of give everybody a vibe that move out of my way. Is that what you're intending to do? Is that what you want? Because you seem unhappy that nobody wants to talk to you. And see what happens. Your thoughts, Hannah?
Yeah, I would also add to that when he's wanting closeness with you, and if you're registering anxiety and fear, I might express to him what you're feeling, and then express to him also that when I experience this, I don't want to be near you, much less close to you. I don't like feeling this way, but and, I would listen in that moment to see if he gaslights you or blame shifts. But if he's able to hear that and reflect on that and he wants closeness, there's another indication that he's willing to do something with the behavior.
It's sort of like if your husband came home from work all sweaty and stinky. Most men would know that that's not a turn on. Right? That's not a turn on for a woman if he wants a hug, he probably will go wash up a little first, right? And so we would probably give our husband some feedback, or if he smelled really bad in bed, we probably would, and he wanted to be intimate, we probably would say, I need you to take a shower. I just need you to wash up a little. I can't be close this way. And they would do that, even if they didn't notice themselves being stinky and sweaty. The fact that they want closeness, they would do that. I think we do a disservice to our husbands by not giving them feedback. My husband has often given me like a tic tac in public because he's noticed I have bad breath. I haven't noticed it. He's like, I'm talking to people and he's like, here's your Altoids, dear, because he's got my back. I don't get offended by that. I'm grateful that he noticed. Or I'll have a friend say, hey, Leslie, you got lipstick on your teeth before I go on Facebook Live. One of my coach will say, you got lipstick on your teeth, take it off. So those are good things that we do for one another. So I would say, especially even in a dating relationship or any kind of relationship that you're feeling bullied by someone or intimidated by someone, hey, when you talk like that, it makes me shut down. I don't want to have to finish this conversation. That can be information for you. That could be the first right step forward. Here's how you do this. I give a toe of feedback. I don't say everything. I give a toe of feedback and see how they receive it. If they say, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. I'm gonna go brush my teeth," or "Thanks for the mint," or "Wow, I didn't realize that I was, overpowering you. Sure, talk." That's good. If they gaslight you and blame you and continue to attack you, that says to you, this person is not interested in my feedback. I'm not going to give anymore. It's like when Jesus says, hey, take the log out of your own eye, speak up, don't judge before you take the log out of their speck. So you are going to take the log out of their eye. You're going to say something to them, but you're going to do your own work first. So you can do it in a wise way. And then if that doesn't work, stop casting your pearls before swine in Matthew 7. Stop giving them your feedback if they don't want it. They're just going to turn on you and trample you with it. Right? And so these are the relational first steps of seeing whether this relationship is a healthy one, this person is a healthy person or not. Diana, any thoughts?
Oh, I think you covered it very well.
All right, why don't you take the next question?
All right. How can I best address my fear that he will continue to mislead and alienate our young adult children? He is the perpetual victim and has convinced them that because I finally broke free of his chronic long term covert abuse, that I am an adulteress for remarrying a genuine, loving Christian man. Hmm. Leslie, for me, this is such a common occurrence and it's very tragic. For me, the antidote is truth. Speaking truth to your young adult children, not giving them details, but speaking truth about maybe some of the reasons why you experience the need to exit the relationship uh, in a broad term. I don't know if you have some other ideas you might.
I don't think we know enough details to comment specifically, but I think that to say to your adult children, daddy's angry that I was unwilling to put up with some of his stuff anymore. And I know that you didn't see it because he was a pretty good daddy. If he was a pretty good daddy, but he was a terrible husband. And I covered for him and I covered up for him. And I tried to make it work as long as I could so that you guys had a stable home because he was a pretty good daddy and he didn't do it to you, but he did it to me and it took its toll. And I'm not letting that happen anymore. And you're just going to have to decide, whose story you're going to believe the most, but what your daddy's telling you isn't true. Right? And you can just leave it at that. You be the healthier, more mature adult. And I think over time, your kids will see who's the healthier person. And, I wasn't going to live like that anymore. And your father wasn't going to change. So I think those are things that, ladies, if you are a over-functioning, heroic rescuer of a woman who's trying to save your marriage for the sake of your children and you're lying and pretending, this is often the cost to you later on, right? This is often the cost that you've misled your children into thinking we have this happy family. And then when you're up to here and you're about to drown and you say, I'm not doing this anymore, your kids are like, Mom, you're the one who's breaking up our family. Why can't you keep doing this? You've done this your whole life. And so you get painted as the bad guy because you were so good at lying and pretending everything was fine when it wasn't, that your children grew up with a story that's not true. We had a happy family. No, we didn't, but you didn't say the truth. And I'm not saying tell your kids the ugly details of your horrible marriage. I'm not saying that. But when things are wrong at home between you and your husband, you might show some of that by saying to your kids, if you're crying, not that I'm cutting onions, but daddy and I had a fight and I don't feel happy right now. And sometimes that happens with mommies and daddies. You don't have to give any more details. But your kids have heard that a little bit throughout their life, that they know that things aren't always great with mommy and daddy. So that if mommy and daddy end up not making it, it's not about what happened. You guys had such a close marriage. It's not such a shock.
And, I also think that I would invite dialogue with them by asking them questions rather than having a position or a stance of defending yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. What bothers you about what I did?
Yeah.
What have you heard? Do you have any questions? Those kind of things. So you're open, healthy, willing to have a dialogue. You can't control what he says. All you can say is, daddy's angry and hurt. And sometimes people say ugly things when that happens. And you're hearing that. It's not true. And your kids are adults. They have to decide for themselves what they're going to believe. Okay. One more question. This is a scary thing. My husband made a false police report stating I was going to self-harm and blame him for it. He planted a gun in my car, stating it was mine. He's fighting to throw me out of my own house. How can I not be afraid he would do other harmful things? What are your thoughts, Diana?
I'm scared. I was just reading in Deuteronomy, and I was thinking about this very thing because when Moses was telling Israel about, he was giving them all the rules. He, like, if somebody murders somebody or if they committed a crime, they had to have 2 or 3 witnesses. But it's very scary in these days that all you have to do is say something to police and potentially be believed. And yeah, to me, if I had a partner that was willing to do this, I would strategize finding safety.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the most extreme form of maliciousness, is to file false reports. I don't think it's safe to be in a relationship with someone who has the potential to put you behind bars.
Right. So I don't think your question should be, how can I not be afraid? I think you should be afraid that he might do other harmful things.
Yes.
And because you're afraid, do safety things for yourself. Get a safety plan. Consult with your domestic violence shelter to create a safety plan for yourself. Document what he's doing. Get evidence of whatever, so that you're being, shrewd as a serpent, innocent as a dove. You're not retaliating evil for evil, but you're understanding that you're dealing with an evil person here who seeks to do you harm. And when you know that, of course you're going to be afraid. And to not be afraid is to kind of go numb and not face reality. If someone's holding a gun to my head, I'm going to be afraid. And I'm going to do what I have to do to get away, right? I'm not going to say, I shouldn't be afraid. I should just trust God in this moment. I'm going to be afraid. My body is going to be afraid. And that's how we're wired. That's how we're wired. So feel your fear and then get to where you are safe, however you need to do that. And that might be moving far away from him, filing for divorce, filing for a restraining order,
Right.
consulting with an expert in domestic violence, those kind of things.
You're going to need to find a legal counsel that's really adept at handling something very specific like this as well. And maybe the domestic violence shelter can help you find someone like that. But yeah, you'll need I would want some legal representation if someone was threatening to do that to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to have time to finish our questions. I want to invite Instagram tonight to join me with Lisa tonight at 7:30 on her channel, Lisa Turkhurst, on talking about, if he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? If you haven't signed up for the workshop yet, please sign up. leslievernick.com/join workshop. And our next Facebook Live will be tomorrow evening, I believe. It's going to be, let me see here. I think it's tomorrow night at 7:30. So tonight we'll do an Instagram at 7:30. Tomorrow night we're going to do a Facebook Live. And we're going to talk about the topic, well, aren't we both sinners? He sins, I sin. How can I judge his sin as worse than my sin? So we're going to talk about that, because oftentimes in counseling, you'll hear, hey, you're both being abusive. Hey, you're both acting wrong. Hey, you're both. And so all of a sudden it feels like, wait a minute, isn't his sin worse than mine? And it's kind of level playing field. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. What's the difference between a healthy sinner and a toxic sinner? So show up tomorrow night and we're going to talk about those things. And until then, I will see you hopefully tonight on Instagram with Lisa. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to end our Instagram feed first. That's the rules. And so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to end our Facebook feed. Before we go on Facebook, I forgot to do this. So I'm going to do it here, even though I ended our Instagram feed. Could you put one takeaway that you got from our time together? What's one thing? We really want to challenge you. If you're going to spend an hour with us, then God has you here for a reason. What is one thing you took away for yourself? that you might need to put into practice? Maybe it's, I need to sign up for that workshop. What's one thing that you got from our talk together that is resonating for you as this is my next right step forward, or this is, I have to change my thinking on this, or, oh, wow,
Mhm.
I didn't know that. That's me, or this is true. What's one thing that you have? Kathy says, my safety has to come first.
We don't
Fear,
have to live in fear.
yeah, I don't have to live in fear, not in a relationship. Okay. We might live in fear in concentration camps and prison. And if you're kidnapped, of course you're going to be in fear, but not in a marriage. Not in a marriage. That should be the safest relationship of all, is a husband and wife relationship.
Mm.
Yeah, I am not alone. And I love that, Sherry, because that's one of the reasons we do these things publicly, because there's so many of you who live in isolation and you feel like, what is wrong with me that this is happening? I'm the only one who has this kind of crazy life. It's not true. It's not true.
Um, we want you to know that you will need to register for the workshop, and I'm putting that in the chat for you. There were some questions about needing more information, so you will need to go and sign up for that. You will get an email letting you know that you've been registered, and the email will have the link for you to join.
Yeah, and you can pick 7:30 p.m. Eastern time or noon Eastern time. And we highly encourage you to, if you sign up today, go to your Tuesday, April 9th calendar, put a big red circle around the time you signed up for, and give yourself an extra hour. So we're going to do an hour of teaching, and then we're going to do an hour or maybe a little longer of Q&A. So give yourself that time to really be present so that you can get this information. If you sign up for this free workshop, I think if you're in counseling or you're thinking about going to counseling, it could save you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of counseling time that you would get information to learn from this workshop. So it's going to be well worth your time. It's going to be well worth your time. And so please, if this is you or you know someone who needs this, offer to accompany her and watch the workshop together and have a conversation about it. It's at lesliebernick.com/join workshop. Okay. Thanks so much. Thank you, Diana.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Bye-bye. See you tonight on Instagram and tomorrow night here again. Bye-bye.